Let me offer some thoughts on what the Church calls Refugee and Migrant Sunday, the Sunday in the year when we think of the plight, the situation of refugees and migrants in the world. You know, among the phenomena of the modern world is the movement of peoples in a vast migration, a great deal of it forced. Many hundreds of thousands flee from persecution and overwhelming difficulty in their own homelands. Few would want to leave their homeland unless forced to do so by circumstances. As with every practical issue, the Christian ought to ask himself, what is the mind of Christ towards the migrating person, and especially to the one seeking refuge from strife and persecution in his own homeland? What would Christ himself do were he receiving the fleeing migrant? And what does he teach in relation to this need? Our Lord teaches us that we are to treat the least person, but especially the one who is suffering, just as we would treat himself. If we knew that it was Jesus himself who was arriving as a refugee, how would we treat him? Our Lord tells us that at our final judgment we shall hear the words, "I was hungry and you gave me food. I was thirsty and you gave me to drink." Or on the contrary, we may hear the words, "I was hungry and you never gave me anything to eat." And we might find ourselves saying, "Lord, when did we see you hungry or thirsty or in prison?" And we will hear the reply, "Whatever you did to the least of these brothers of mine, you did to me." We read that in Matthew chapter 25. That consideration should guide our whole approach to anyone in need, and among the neediest in the world are the refugees of the world. The popes have continually appealed to countries to do all they can to assist refugees. This can be inconvenient and costly, but throughout life we are continually being called on to sacrifice our convenience to the point of real cost for the sake of those in need. Even to stop to help someone with our time and attention is a call on our convenience. I was once in a shopping centre and had cause to pause from what I was doing. A poor old tramp was walking not far from me, and I noticed a man who obviously had his own work to do, stopping to show him some kindness. He talked to him in a genuinely interested way. I could not help thinking what a wonderful thing he was doing. He was treating that man with real respect, a respect that he may have seldom received. We must treat migrants and refugees as persons deeply loved by Christ, as children of our common Father in heaven, and not simply as a problem. Their arrival constitutes not just a problem, but actually a great opportunity for the flourishing of the moral life of a nation. There is much that debases, degrades and undermines the moral life of a society, and it is a thing of moment to identify moral initiatives that will strengthen a nation's soul. Think of how pleased God would be with a country, and how a nation will be blessed in its moral life by God, were it to treat refugees as ones loved by Christ, as people with whom Christ identifies. In all of this, Christ poses the example of the Good Samaritan. The man was left half dead by bandits on the roadside, and people passed by except for the Good Samaritan. When our Lord finished the story, he said, "Now go and do the same yourself." So many refugees are like that person left half dead by the roadside. The Christian ought to be like a beacon, a shining example of how the refugee, the person in difficult straits, is to be treated. Let us regard it as a duty to be well informed as to the refugee's plight, and as to the more humane methods of treating him and helping him. Let us try to be truly like Christ to the migrant and refugee. Let us remember that our Lord himself was once a refugee, together with Mary and Joseph, fleeing to Egypt from the murderous designs of Herod, without documents and without any capacity to prove anything. Our Lord and Our Lady and St. Joseph would heartily identify with the refugee